What is going on again, everyone? Still in the studio. This is tutorial number 2 on Davinci Resolve. And just as I promised last episode, we're deep diving into how I properly grade my interior log footage for delivery. Now, last video, I showed you a down and dirty way to get it done if you were brand new to Davinci Resolve. If you haven't seen that, check up over there. I'll put a link to it. If you have seen it and you're ready for the next step, you're ready to increase your production value and deliver something far superior, that's what this video is all about. I'll show you in comparison right next to each other the way I edited last time and the way these are edited so you can really see the difference and see what matters for you and your clients. Let's go. All right, everyone, as I just said, we are going straight into grading the interior footage, only grading interior log footage. I'm using Vlog from the Panasonic or the Lumix GH5S. Every camera is a little bit different, but that's what I'm messing with. And in particular, we're going to use a few clips that we used from last episode just so you can see the difference and be on the real Lime timeline. Let's jump on over to this, and I'm going to full screen this just so you can see the difference between the two different grades. Now, please keep in mind that this is all set to quarter resolution, so that way my computer operates quickly, but you'll be able to instantly notice the difference in the two grades. Now, the entire time, the nitty-gritty grade will be on the top, and the professional, or the proper way to grade, should I say, will be on the bottom. Let's press play, and you can really just see the difference. First thing I want you to notice is the dynamic range. You can really tell the dynamic range between the two. Another thing you can tell between the two is the colors. So if you'll notice, the colors from the curves method, they're just not as rich and vibrant as the method that I'm going to show you today. And that's really the main difference between the two. Granted, you do get a little bit more dynamic range from doing it this way, not a whole lot more, but it's really about the colors in my opinion. The other way, you're kind of squishing the colors. This way you're opening up the colors, but either way, it'll make more sense when we get into it. So let's just grab one of these clips. Let's grab this one, since I know it's fairly easy to start with. We'll just drag it on over here. Let's reset everything about it. So pull up our inspector tab. All these buttons over here, these are all where it's set up. I had them set up in funny places so I could show you that little video, but if you double click anything, it will reset that completely. So we've reset it back to its main position. The edit tab, we're not really going to go over today because we went over it last time. So we're going straight on over to color. And as soon as this loads up, we will be ready to go. First thing I want to do is reset everything so that way it's back to just the normal, regular old, this is the footage straight out of camera, how it comes, right? I'm going to get rid of this for a moment. Now, I'm going to show you first how to successfully build this with nodes. And then as I go along, it'll make sense why I've done all this in the beginning instead of at the end. So the very first thing I want you to do is, as before, we're going to create a bunch of serial nodes. We need 4 nodes to be exact. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, on our 4th node over here, this is where we're going to put all of our sharpening, because we want the sharpening to come after every single other adjustment. It's kind of like the finishing touch, if you will, to the grade. So at the very end, we're going to put sharpening. For my camera, interiors, it seems 47, 48, 46 maybe sometimes is really the best. Over that looks a little bit too much. Now, see these buttons right over here? This says blur, but it's blur, it's sharpening, it's everything. The way the sharpen tool works here is we're going to mess mainly with this radius, or at least that's all I used while doing this process. Whenever you go up, it makes things blurry. Whenever you go down, it makes things sharp. So keep that in mind. We can reset it like always. If you double click the bottom, 0.50 is right in the center. As I mentioned before, about 48, 47 is where it looks good for my computer after, or should I say, where it looks good on my screen after doing all these edits. Now, I have node 4. The only thing on it is my sharpen layer because, as I mentioned before, it's the very last thing for this scene I want to be done. What I'm going to do is if you click on the numbers down here, it turns on and off the nodes that you have right there. Now I'm going to turn off this node because I don't need it right now. I don't need it until the very end. Next thing I'm going to do is jump over to node number 3. This is where the real magic happens, and you can only use this part of the tutorial if you own Davinci Resolve. Unfortunately, denoising aspect only comes with the paid feature. So if you have the free feature, this is the only part of the process you will skip. If you have the paid process, follow along with me because the denoising in Davinci Resolve really is awesome. Now we're going to come on over here to this key right over here, all the way to the right, the motion effects. Now I'm going to show you what I set mine on. I am personally not 100% sure what all of this means over here, but I know a few things and I know the ones I use the most. What I have the biggest issue with while grading footage is grain in the dark areas, and in particular, color noise. Color noise happens a lot during the grading process of pushing up interior shots because you're trying to make everything look as bright as possible without overexposing the windows completely or all the lights. So it really is kind of like this fine balance back and forth. And during that process, you end up getting a lot of artifacts built up in your darks. So color noise is the one thing in particular we're going to be attacking with these settings. So let's jump back over here. Temporal NR, I set this to 5 because I wanted to sample as many as possible while making these decisions. Faster, better, or none, I'm always going to pick better. This is your personal preference. All these settings also kind of depend on how fast your computer is. The slower and older your computer is, the more taxing this is all going to be on your system. So please keep that in mind. Motion radius for this one, I put small. Now, temporal threshold over here. I always put this fairly low at about 5 to 6. And then this button right here is unlink. It allows you to unlink the luma and the chroma. Now, as I mentioned before, the color artifacts is the main issue that I have all the time, and that is all in the chroma key, not the luma. So I believe the luma has to deal with the brightness and the chroma has to deal with the colors. At least that's what it makes sense to me, and that's kind of how it seems when I edit. I can't guarantee that's exactly what it means, but that's what it means for the purpose of this tutorial. So just believe it for now. That being said, I unlink these two. Sorry about that. I unlink these two so I can pump up the chroma. I always put my chroma about 10.4, somewhere around there. Then we'll go over to the spatial NR, enhanced over everything else, faster, better, enhanced. Once again, slow system, medium system, fast system. Enhanced radius for this one, I'm going to put large because I want it to sample a large radius when it's making decisions about the denoising that it's doing. Once again, I'm going to put these fairly close, but a little bit higher up on the spatial side. So instead of stopping at 5, I'm going to stop around 9 on my luma. Once again, I'm going to unlink the two, and my chroma, I'm going to put up to about 16, 15, 16, somewhere around there seems to be really good for me. Now, when you set all of this up, as I mentioned in my previous video, I'm trying to set myself up for success. So once you do all this, you'll never have to do it again. Granted, sometimes you'll have to come in here to separate clips and kind of adjust these settings a little bit. Sometimes it won't be enough. Sometimes it'll be way too much. Generally speaking, this is good for me. Now, that being said, once this is all set up, I will now come up here and turn off the denoising node. The reason I do this is because I don't need it. Once again, I don't need it till the very end. So I'm trying to tax my computer and my system as little as possible during the process. Now, you may be asking, why did I do this first and not just do it at the end? There, my friends, is the real question. This is where I'm going to set you up for success in the future. Now, we go to node number 2. What I put on node number 2 is only 2 things. I come over here back to my color primaries and I put in my contrast. In my previous video, I mentioned it's always around 1.12. That's about where I like my contrast. And I put my saturation. That is going to be at about 60%. At least that's what I seem to like it at for interiors, since those yellow and orange interior daylight bulbs can be overwhelming at times. This keeps a lot of the color influence from one another. It seems to be really good for me. When I first started, I put it at like 50%, 60 to 65 seems to be a good jazz. If you want to go super technical, go 62.5. You can go right in between. How about that? Go Davinci Resolve. All right, now we're back into it. The only thing that's left to do is our actual grade right here on this. Why did I save this for last? It's because I want you to do something right now. I want you, now that you have this built out just like this, you've got 3 closed off, you've got 4 closed off. On 2, all you have is your contrast and your saturation, and on 1, you have absolutely no edits done. Make sure that looks like that correctly first. Then you're going to come over to this picture over here. You're going to right click and you're going to grab still. What this does is it creates, in essence, let's get rid of this one. That's the one I had earlier. Let's get rid of all of them, since this is what it'll look like when you first open it up. Click this little gallery tab over here and you'll see no stills created. Once again, grab still. There we go. Now, what this is really doing is this is grabbing a screenshot of your node grade. This will stay in here forever. Now, I will right click and I will change label, which basically means rename. And I call this interior base grade. That's just what I call it personally. And that way I have one setup for my interior, one setup for my exterior, one setup for my drone stuff, and one setup for dark rooms. Those are the ones that I usually keep in my portfolio personally to refer back and forth to. Now, let me show you why it's important we took the steps that we did earlier. We'll go on over to edit, right? And let's just bring in a bunch of, actually, let's go to media so that, oh no, edit was right. I'm sorry. We're going to go into our thing and let's just grab some random clips. Oh, let's grab some random interior clips. That would make way more sense, wouldn't it? I for in, O for out, and drag it down. Then let's grab this one right here, a nice little bathroom shot. I for in, O for out, and just like before, make sure you grab the screen, drag it down. Now I'm just dragging these down for 2 reasons, and it's just to show you this as an example. Now, here we go. These are our 2 clips we just drug in. They have absolutely no node grade, right? Well, if you, once again, just like in my last video, I told you could steal grades from other parts of your video. You can also steal the grade from your gallery, which is why your gallery is super cool. Hover over this and just like before, press down on your middle mouse button or your wheel, your rotating wheel, whatever that thing's called on the mouse. If you click down on it, you'll notice instantly that it steals that grade. Everything is set up for you. Everything is ready to go. So every time you pull clips into here, you'll have that whole thing that we just went through. It'll already be set up. You'll never have to do any of that again. All you'll have to do is grade the footage. Once again, all you have to do is select this clip, come over to your gallery, press down that middle mouse wheel, and boom, you have stolen that grade. Now, the reason I did everything else first and did not edit the film is because I wanted you to be able to save this gallery just like I did, so that way you'll have all this work created. Now, you can just go edit the actual clips. Now we'll get into actually editing these clips. It's not super difficult. It's not super time consuming. We've already done 3/4 of the work, believe it or not. So we have our contrast and our saturation is already set, so we don't have to worry about that. All we have to worry about is the grade. Now, last video, I talked to you about scopes. These are down here on the bottom right. If you can't see them, you can come over here and select them. They're all over here. They've got information, parade, and then these are your keyframes. I keep the parade scopes on because that's what this color grading is all about. I accidentally had my last video zoomed in a little too much, so you couldn't see this very well, but there it is. And what? Get out of here. Stupid Windows sending me notifications. Let's get back into this. So now let's start the grade. Now, if you remember before, I started by messing with these curves down here. We're actually not going to touch these curves at all as far as I'm concerned. Let's reset that. Boom. We're really going to mess over here with the gamma and lift. These are the ones we're going to mess with the most when we first start. And you're going to kind of play this little dance between the two. You'll lift up your gamma and you'll bring down your lift. Now, what these two are basically, lift are your darks, gammas are your midtones, gains are your highs. That's basically what it means. So if you'll notice your parade over here, as I lift the gamma, you'll see everything go up. And if you look up here, you'll see everything brighten. Now, whenever I edit my clips, as I mentioned before, I don't like my highlights to go over 896 because I just think it looks a little blown out like that. So that's kind of the frame that I'm going for all the time. Now that I've done this though, you can tell by looking at the image that it's missing a lot of the contrast that we put into it. And that's why we go back with the lift. So now we're going to go down with lift until those bars go crushed right at 0. Now we're going to come back over to gamma, lift it up again, come over here, lift this down again. All right, so where you would think to go next would be this pivot button, but believe it or not, the pivot only works on the contrast layer. So what we're going to do instead is go over to this next option called HDR. And what this does is it opens up some different options, even though they're kind of the same options. Now, these are called dark, shadow, and light, but these really are blacks, shadows, and highlights. So now that we have this, you can look at your parade over here. Everything looks good. All of our highlights are under 896, but they're all crushed right at 0. That's how you know you have black blacks and not blown out whites. You can have blown out whites if you'd like, but as a real estate video, for me personally, I just don't like the way that looks. I think it makes it look like it was done with a cheap camera, so I try and keep those highlights down a little bit. Now we're going to come over here and mess with the shadows and the darks, and this will be less about looking at the scopes and more about looking at the actual image itself. So let's mess with the shadows. I usually bring shadows down, I bring my darks down, and then I bring the lights up just a little bit. Now, if we come over here, we can see before and after. And what I'd like to do is we'll go back to this edit page over here. And since I've already done this one right here, look at the difference in the two. Let's go to color mode. Let's open this up real quick. You can really see the difference in the two. Like, let's look at the bed right here. Look at how on the down and dirty grade, look, the highlights are blown out, but there's no highlight blown out on our grade. Look at the color differences. Like, look at the gray, looks like the actual gray. This gray looks really dark. The leather looks kind of yellowy. This looks a little yellowy. Like, the colors in the down and dirty grade are off. The colors in the professional grade are better. Now that we've done one, let's go on to another one. How about that? So we did this one. Let's see the difference of how these two work whenever you get in a room that isn't like the pretty ones that I've shown you so far. I mean, this seems to be my issue with most tutorials online, is that they take the easiest and prettiest image and edit it. So I'm going to grab one from a house that is not pretty and bright and all gray and white. Instead, this dining room is actually brown. Let me find this. I know I drew it. Here it is. So let's drag this on over here. Look at that, brown. It's like this brown gold, lots of yellow lights, lots of color contamination in this image. So this one will be way more difficult, and this is where you'll really get to see the difference in the two techniques shine. So we got this. Let's drag this on down. We'll come on over here, go to the color. Now, the very first thing I'll do, just to show you what it looks like and the difference, is let's do the down and dirty. Remember, straight to the blacks, to the first hump. Then we'll kind of come over here, lift this up. There we go. And that's the down and dirty image. You'll notice first that this brownish gray background looks more like greenish brown, greenish gray. You can see a lot of the color contamination still. The maroon in this table doesn't look quite right. They've got some sort of light bloom going on over here because of the actual edit. Like there's a lot of issues with this image when you look at it. But look how easy that was to edit. Now let's reset it and we'll do the professional grade and you can see the difference. First thing we're going to do is come up here and steal our interior base grade as before. This gives us everything that we need except for our primary grade. And let's start working on that. Just before, look at your scopes over here. Look at, see, none of them are crushing to the bottom and none of them are quite 896, which is why it still looks a little flat. So we're going to go to the actual primaries tab, not our HDR. We do HDR second, primaries tab first. Come over to gamma. We're going to lift up that gamma nice and high, bring down that lift nice and low, bring up the gamma again, nice and high, bring down that. So you can already tell the difference in the two techniques. It already looks way better. The colors look richer. Everything looks brighter. Out here looks a little bright. So we'll bring this gain down just a little bit. Now that we've got all this going, let's talk a little bit about this offset button. The offset button is actually, or I guess the offset slider would be a better term. It's actually really cool. It allows you to add or detract colors from the color wheel simply by using it. Now they have this color wheel on every single thing. You can change the colors in lift, colors in gamma, colors in gain. I prefer to try and change them all at the same time. Grab it and I just barely drag it over a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. You can see how small these numbers changed. And it gave it just a little bit. Let's go before, after, and we're not even done. To the HDR tab again, let's bring down these a little bit, just like before. Bring down the darks a little bit, just like before. And bring up those lights right there. And that's it. That's our grade. Let us once again look at before and after. There we go. Now let's say all of these are done edited. Here, we'll steal this grade, just call it edited. And we'll take this one and we'll steal this grade just to call it edited. There we go. Everything on our timeline is edited. So what do we do next? Now is the time where we go through these clips and we will cut on the denoise and the sharpener. Just like that, cut them all on. We'll go through each and every clip and just cut on the denoiser and the sharpener after each other because this is when it's time to deliver the product. Go on over to delivery tab now that everything has been properly graded. Once you press that render all button, it will take its sweet time and render out your entire project. Now I hope that was not too fast. Or I hope I did not skip over anything you really wanted to see or needed to see. I think I put it all in there. We went over everything. That is the way you should grade. It just makes a far superior final product. It will stretch out your dynamic range a little bit. And most importantly, it will really do the world of difference for your colors. It'll make your colors richer and brighter, more accurate, and less spillover. At least that's how it's been for my experience. So that's it. That's the whole video. I hope you like this second tutorial. I'm definitely going to be making more in the Davinci Resolve realm. And the next one I'm going to cover is going to be exteriors, but that'll be fairly easy project. As always, thanks for watching. Press that like button, mash subscribe, all that jazz. Catch you next time.